Welcome back to Faith Walk with Debbie. Got my buddy again with me, so just letting you know in case you see her head pop up. Well, reality was here. God had not miraculously prevented me from having the Thymoma Cancer surgery. Like I had prayed and prayed for months. It finally was that dreaded time. IU had connections, though, in order to be able to get us a discounted rate on a hotel. So I reserved a hotel for my husband and I to stay in the night before surgery, which was December 17th. My husband and I headed to Indianapolis early that afternoon, and we navigated so I could show him where the Thymoma Cancer Center was. That way, the next day when he would be driving, he would have an idea of how to get there, and I had already been there because of the surgery prep testing. We checked into the hotel about 3 p.m. that afternoon. It was a very nice studio with a kitchen, living room, bedroom, and bath. I wanted it to be a special evening to ease my apprehensive feelings, and so I chose this special place so that it would feel more like home. But I was really disappointed to find out the hotel did not have a restaurant, because I really was looking forward to having food delivered to our room. I tried to find a nice restaurant that wasn't too expensive because I was afraid to go to the restaurant to eat because I was really apprehensive with social distancing. So eventually we found a pizza place, and my husband went and picked it up, and we took it back to the hotel and ate in our room. That evening we watched TV and played cards just to pass the time. But in preparation for surgery, I had to take a shower that evening. And after I get done taking a shower, they made me wash with this special bottle of stuff. And it was red in color, and the hotel wash rags were white, so it stained it. But we went to sleep early because we had to get up very early the next morning. I had to be up before 4:30 because I needed to drink some Gatorade before 4:30. I also had to take a shower again with that red liquid, and I wasn't allowed to eat anything. I had to be to the Thymoma Cancer Center by 5:45 that morning, and my husband parked in the parking garage on the 3rd floor so we could walk the walkway across the street to get to the Thymoma Cancer Center, which made it a lot more convenient. So when we went in the Thymoma Cancer Center, we had to pass the COVID testing, the temperature and all those crazy questions. And then we took the elevator to the first floor and asked directions on how to be able to get to the basement level, which is where they performed the surgery. We checked in, and my husband and I waited in the waiting area. Eventually, my name was called. We went to the prep room. I got changed into my hospital gown, and they gave me an IV. The anesthesiologist came to talk to me, and I told him I don't do well at all with anesthetic, but whatever Kettering had used really worked great. And I had hoped that maybe they'd call Kettering to find out what they used, but they didn't. They did their own thing. But he asked me if I wanted a thoracic epidural. I didn't even know that was an option, but the sounds of it scared me because I don't like needles, and to have it put in my back, and I've heard horror stories of people who've had epidurals. But he explained that I would be in a lot less pain after surgery if I had one of those. So some inside of me told me, go for it. So I agreed to get a thoracic epidural. And the surgeon popped in all dressed up at that time after we got done talking to the anesthesiologist. And it looked kind of strange because she looked like she was ready to go to a party the way she was dressed. But I guess it's just another day for her. And I mean, it was just a few minutes before surgery was supposed to happen. But I guess she just would go quickly scrub up and get ready for surgery. Well, eventually they wheeled me to the surgery room, and my husband went to a specific waiting room. Once I got to the surgery room, they had me get off my bed, climb a couple steps to sit on the surgery table. And at that point, they had me bend over. They inserted the numbing needle, which, like you've heard me say before, definitely hurt. Then they injected the epidural, and they had me lay down on the surgery table, and I don't remember anything after that. I probably, they told me I'd probably be in the hospital about 4 to 5 days after surgery, and they said the pain level would be 10 to 10, which is worse than what open heart surgery is. I also was told, depending on what the surgeon found, that I might have to have part of my lung removed, and the radiologist thought that the cancer was connected to the lung, and that's why there was that possibility. But the surgeon didn't agree with that. She really thought that it was not connected to the lung, but she couldn't confirm it until she had surgery. And she said if everything went perfect, she planned to do microscopic surgery, which entailed only 3 incisions instead of a large incision. And we expected the surgery to last for a couple hours. Well, they wheeled me away at 7:45 that morning to go to the surgery room. Somewhere between 9 and 9:30, the doctor came to talk to my husband. He was shocked to see her so soon. She said surgery was very successful and without any complications, and she didn't have to remove any lung. And instead of a large incision, she was able to do just 3 smaller incisions, approximately 1 inch each. And then the surgeon went in through the left rib cage in order to be able to do that. There were 3 incisions altogether. 2 of them were glued shut, and the third was where they had a drainage tube from the surgery. My husband had to wait for me to get through recovery because of COVID. And then he was allowed to visit me once I got to my room. He was only allowed to stay for a very short period of time. He brought my suitcase to the room, and after he visited with me for a little bit, he was required to leave the hospital and not be allowed back until he picked me up at dismissal, which was very overwhelming for me to have to be in the hospital with no one I knew. But God helped me through it. I remember waking up in the room, and I was in pain. I felt nauseous, and I had told my husband to make sure that they got that, because I had lost my hair during chemo, and they had a surgery cap on me. I had told him just as soon as he saw me, if I didn't have my chemo head covering on, make sure they put that on. I didn't want that surgery cap, and I didn't want people to see my head because I was really embarrassed at that point of how it looked because my hair had barely grown in. So as soon as I saw him, I asked for my hat. He helped me put it on. I was half in and out at this point, and I ended up throwing up a couple times. Eventually, they said my husband had to leave. And before he left, we made sure the cell phone was charging and that I had access to it if I needed to call him. After my husband left, I remember feeling like I could not stay awake at all. I dozed in and out of restless sleep. And they also had oxygen go into my nose with these, I don't know, it really looked weird. These weird plastic things under my nose. And it kind of bothered me. And I remember accidentally moving it several times. And when I did that, it would make the machine beep, 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 and then a warning sound. And in the beginning, the nurse came in to check, to check me often. And whenever I would set it off, they'd have to come and make the machine go off. In the beginning, though, they checked on me often, and I was in pain, but it wasn't unbearable. I was not allowed out of the bed without any assistance, though. My body was hooked up to all kinds of machines, but all I was given was water to drink. And I remember later in the day asking if I should have some food. The nurse said she would ask, and I remember hours went by before they answered me. They felt I needed to wait longer to make sure I would not throw up anymore. So it was later that evening before I was given something small to eat, but because I was so out of it, I honestly don't even remember what it was that I ate. During the night, I do remember, though, that my arm was really hurting. Excuse me. They had injected 2 different IVs, and one was like a backup. I never really understood it. The other area had a tube injected into my arm and hand area, and they said it has something to do with my heart. But like I say, I never really quite understood what it was for. So finally, in the middle of the night, this precious nurse tried to make the IV more comfortable by retaping them. I remember her being a foot from my face, and because of COVID, that really concerned me because I didn't want to be contaminated. But I felt this was necessary because I really was in a lot of pain from the IV. And whatever she did, it did help relieve some of the pain. She said she couldn't remove the IV, though, until I was dismissed. So I basically just had to live with it. The nurses were very nice. However, they were overworked. I was relieved when I, was able to use the call button because at least there was a human voice on the other end. Because back in September when I was in the hospital locally for my heart, no one verbally answered the call button, and I had to wait a long time for someone to come to my room. So that really concerned me since my husband wasn't going to be able to be with me this time. And I was relieved when at least I could have a human voice on the other end. But many times when I needed something or I needed to go to the bathroom, I would call and tell him, and most of the time I had to wait a long time, even an hour for someone to come, which really isn't good and really bothered me. I really wanted to try, to go to the bathroom without assistance, but when I realized how many machines I was attached to, I really realized it was impossible for me to do it by myself. But in the beginning, I had a catheter put in me. I don't think I've ever had one of those. So that was a new experience. And sometime while I was there, I remember moving the sheets and a pillow. By the way, they had pillows propped all around my bed to help me be more comfortable. But one time when I was repositioning stuff, I accidentally pulled on the catheter and it scared me. I'm like, oh my gosh, did I mess something up? I wasn't sure if I had hurt something or messed it up. But after the nurse checked, I was relieved to know everything was okay. And later, I did it again, but that time I wasn't as concerned. The IU Medical Center was a teaching hospital, so often they had students working. And the next morning, one of the students came to see how I was doing, and he checked to see how much stuff was in the pouch. And the pouch was catching the remains from the drain tube. And he was really impressed that there wasn't much in it. And I was excited to hear his comment about that. He said, I actually might be able to go home that day. Those words totally shocked me because I had been prepared to stay 4 to 5 days originally. And to be told I could go home the day after surgery was amazing. Well, after a while, he came back with a doctor. They examined me, and I was told I could go home once the epidural tube that was still in my back was removed. And then after it was removed, then I would be able to go home. But the problem was they had given me a shot to help me not have any blood clots, and they had done that like at 6:30 that morning, and I had to wait 12 hours after they did that before the epidural tube could actually be removed. And they had to get a special doctor in order to be able to remove it, and they got permission to be able to do that, but we had to take and wait. But eventually the nurse told me she got it all arranged. But another problem arose. I was to be dismissed with a prescription. And because dismissal from the hospital would be later in the evening, we knew we would not be able to get back home in order to get the prescription filled. And my husband didn't feel comfortable driving in Indianapolis after dark to find a pharmacy. So I asked the nurse if we could get it filled in the hospital pharmacy. The problem was I only had a few dollars on me and no credit card. Eventually, the nurse ended up getting the prescription, and I was able to pay her for it because it would only cost a little bit. So that problem was solved. About 6:30 that night, that special doctor came in and took out the epidural. But then I waited and I waited. And I remember waiting in the chair near the air conditioner. I was absolutely freezing. But again, nurses, it was hard to get anybody to come in and help. So I waited and I waited until the nurse finally was ready to dismiss me. But in the meantime, I had gathered up all of my stuff and had it all arranged, ready to leave. I had called my husband earlier with the dismissal plan, but timing was difficult because I lived an hour and a half away. He got to the IU Medical Center building and he waited in the drive out front. And he waited for the nurse to dismiss me. Finally, about 8:30 that evening, I got dismissed. The nurse, along with all my stuff, which was a lot because I thought I was going to be there for 5 days, headed to the entrance. And when we got there, I saw my husband waiting in the car, which was a big relief. They loaded my stuff in and I very carefully got in the car and buckled up. I remember that drive home very painfully. Every little bump, pothole he hit, I felt pain. He tried so hard, but those highways are not smooth. So I was very relieved when I got home. It was late, maybe about 10 o'clock that night. We finally made it home. But I praise God for this successful surgery and the amazing recovery. They said pain level would be 10 out of 10. The highest I felt in the hospital was 4. They said I'd be in the hospital for 4 to 5 days, and I got out the next day. That was absolutely amazing. And I want to share in John 15:7 in the New Living Translation. But if you remain in me, and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want, and it will be granted. Well, this time, God definitely went far beyond my prayer request regarding a successful surgery. We can definitely have confidence that when we pray, God hears us. And I thank Him so much that He gave me a successful surgery and a quick recovery so I could get out of that hospital. So please join me next time. And I will share about my recuperating process after surgery.